All right, for you guys. Awesome. I hope everybody's having a great morning. This is Paint with Lovejoy, and we're going to be doing a violin painting today. And this was a viewer request. And I will be painting with a knife and a brush today. So as always, with all of my videos, if there is a pre-drawn image on here, you've got two options to get your image on your canvas. You can either pause the video and draw what you see, and that's the one I highly recommend just because it's good practice. The other option is at the end of this live feed, I will upload what I call a traceable to my website, and you can download the traceable, print it out, and then with carbon paper, you can transfer this image to your canvas. And for my beginner painters, that just helps get your initial composition on your canvas without a whole lot of stress of trying to draw it. But as you get more comfortable with painting, kind of practice your drawing skills. And it's one of those things that, just like painting, you get better and more comfortable the more that you practice. So for today's painting, we are doing the violin, and we're going to kind of jump back and forth so paint can dry, given that this is only a half-hour little demo. But if you're painting this at home or on the replay, feel free to pause the video, maybe let some of your layers dry, and then pick it back up and do more of the scraping method. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And I apologize for the few shakes on the camera. My cat is totally loving the cords that are hanging down on the bottom, so just fix that. All right, so I am using the knife, and I'm on an 8x10 canvas, so I'm going to use a smaller knife compared to the traditional one that I usually go to. So if you're on a bigger canvas, you can use your larger knife. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of put our base brown colors on here, then we'll go to our background, and then we'll kind of jump back and forth with the strings being the last thing that we add. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grab my lighter of the two browns, and this is raw sienna, and the reddish brown is burnt sienna. And we're going to kind of scrape this on our entire violin, and then we're going to put a darker color, that raw sienna, or the burnt sienna, that reddish brown on there. So with my style palette knife painting, I do the scraping method. Traditional palette knife painting is usually going to be really thick, and you're applying a lot of paint. And in some of my other videos, I do that towards the end on the flowers or some of the final details. So try a variety of knife styles, and just kind of find what works for you. And it is nice to kind of incorporate both the knife and brushwork in the same painting. All right. And if you are painting along with me and realize that you're holding your breath, take a big inhale right now, just relax. We're escaping the world for a little bit while you're painting or watching the video. The news and this craziness will still be there when we're done painting, but right now it's just a nice little escape. So if you are at home and you're painting on a stretched canvas like I'm painting, I do recommend that you carry your color over the sides, the tops, and the bottom. That way it looks really nice when you hang it on your wall, having that color wrap around the edge. Now, as I'm scraping this on here, you'll notice that I actually go over some of the black lines. That's okay. If you go over yours, awesome. If you don't, that's okay as well. And with acrylic paint, if this is one of your first time painting, acrylic paint is a very versatile medium for my beginner painters, because if you paint something that you don't like, or maybe you get a color in an area that you don't want, all you do is you let it dry, and in 15 minutes you can put another color on top of it. So like I said, it's a lot of wiggle room for my beginner painters, because I do want you to trust your instincts. In creativity, your instincts are pushing you in the direction you need to go. So the more that you can kind of focus on that and hone into it, the happier you're going to be with your results, and your growth will be even larger than if you try to fight it and do something else. So trust your instincts as you are painting. Yeah, my cat licks the cords too, and apparently my older cat loves the palette knives. She actually cleaned the handles really well when they fell on the ground the other day, and I didn't realize. And she was purring and absolutely loved it. So thank goodness the paint's non-toxic, but I don't want to encourage that to become a habit for her. All right, oh, let's get this little spot too. This is going to be the shadow of our violin. And those of you at home, I did put it in the little conversation box, but feel free to utilize any of the tools that you have. You do not have to just do this with a palette knife or with paint. You can follow along with crayons, colored pencils, pretty much anything that you want. So now I'm grabbing that reddish brown, the darker brown, the burnt sienna, and on the right-hand side of this violin, the right-hand side of the canvas, we're going to be putting our shadow value in there. And I am scraping right on top of the raw sienna, so it is mixing colors a little bit. And this is slightly similar to the wet on wet blending that I usually do with the brush. It's just a different application. But your color is changing based on the color that's underneath and the color that we're scraping on top of. And if you're following along at home, you do not have to do everything that I do. Just kind of use this as a guide and put your colors in similar areas and similar shapes that I put them in. Again, it does not have to be exact. All right. And remember to breathe. Thank goodness when I'm talking to all you guys, that keeps me breathing, but I tend to hold my breath sometimes too. So laugh at yourself a little bit. All right, so not bad for a couple of base colors. So again, we kind of surrounded these elements on the right-hand side of the canvas. And then this little kind of, I guess, shadow depth version for the violin. We have a little bit hanging out underneath there. I am going to fill in these little areas real quick with black. So that way I do need that part to be dry for our last step. That's going to be the strings that we'll put on top of that. So again, just moved over to the black paint, still with the knife, and scraping along. And again, if you want to cover that around the edge, you can. And let's see, we're actually going to do this top one and bottom one in black, and then I'm going to do kind of a gray for that middle element. And I am more of a visual artist, so I actually do not know the specific words or parts to a violin. So I'm sure you guys at home know what this element is that kind of pushes the strings up as they are taut on the violin. I greatly, greatly appreciate all the artists that can do the musical qualities, the dance qualities, the singing qualities. I definitely stick with the visual arts. That's where I'm comfortable. And I tell people, if I ever sang for you, you might not ever be my friend again. I think I'm a little tone deaf. So I'll stick with my speaking voice. All right, so now I'm actually making a light gray. So I pulled some of that white aside. A tiny amount of black goes a long way to make a light gray. And we're just going to fill this in, and your gray may be a little different shade than mine. That's okay. And if you happen to pick up some of that brown paint in here, don't stress, just kind of work it into it. If it bothers you a lot, just take a paper towel, wipe it off, and then you can reapply. All right, so looking good. Now we're going to give this a little bit amount of time to dry, but we've kind of got our three colors on there, and then we're going to move into our background, and I'm going to be using teal and white with some hints of purple on top of that. So if you have followed some of my other videos and you are taking your progress photos, this is a great place to take your progress photo. And it's really nice to take your progress photos because when you look back in a month, a year, 2 years from now, it's one of the few things that we have a visual documentation of what we learn and how much we grow. So keep your progress photos because we can see our own creative evolution with that. So now I'm taking my light teal and I pulled some white aside, a little bit of teal. You can make yours to the shade of teal that you like. And this is where I like it when we get into the longer brush strokes or knife strokes. And kind of play with this as you're applying your paint in your background. Don't feel like you have to mix everything on your plate perfectly. If you want, and here actually let me do it right now as I'm talking about it. So I'm going to wipe the knife off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a chunk of white and a chunk of teal, and they're kind of separated on here. And then when you scrape them on, it just creates kind of a fun effect. So just play with stuff. You know, you are what I call all my students adult kindergartners right now. You're just having fun. You're going back to being 5 years old. And the only adult part is if you are consuming an alcoholic beverage. So if you are not of age, please do not consume alcohol and say that I told you to do it. All right. So I'm going to be bringing it up right up next to the violin and working into that deep little groove right there. And I will be keeping my canvas in the same orientation since I am filming. But at home, if you need to turn your canvas sideways, upside down, if you need to hold the knife in a different way, definitely adjust to what you need for your comfort level at home. Most things in life and in art are merely, well, I can't probably say that about life, but definitely in art, they're merely suggestions. You know, there really is truly no absolute right or wrong way to paint. The only way to fail at painting is to not paint at all. Right. And the more that you handle and work with the knife, the more comfortable you'll get with moving into tighter or smaller spaces. So again, don't be afraid to hold your tool in an unconventional way just to see if it works. And remember to breathe. If you're finding that you are shaky with the knife, that means you're holding your breath. So as you go to scrape, if you exhale, or if you're using a brush, if you exhale as you touch the canvas, it's going to make it a lot easier for you and maybe less shaky. And again, if you're on a stretched canvas, carry that color around the sides. And if you want to do that with a brush instead of the knife, it does make it a little bit easier, but it is excellent practice if you use the knife. You will likely get a lot of paint on your fingers from holding it, but that's okay. That's part of the fun. All right, so I'm going to wipe this off. I'm actually going to grab a touch of purple. And just like the wet on wet blending from some of the other videos, we're going to slap that on there, maybe slap a little bit here. Let's get a little shadow in that groove. Then I go to wipe the knife off again, and then just play with the direction that your knife is going and watching how it mixes with the color underneath. There is no right or wrong way when you're doing this. Your brain is taking in a lot of information, and it's observing how the color's changing, how the color mixes together, what happens when you move your knife in a particular direction. So be kind to yourself when you're in the beginning stages of painting. And even if you've been painting for years, be kind to yourself. There's always new things to learn, new directions to go, and things to try. All right, so now I'm going to grab the white, do the same thing. Little spot there. Let's put a little on that side. And the white, the lighter colors will get eaten up by the darker colors a lot quicker. So still using kind of a bit of a light pressure. So that way my white stays a bit more solid in that background. And let's see, I think I want to do one more round of just the teal. Let's get a bit more of a shadow on that edge. There we go. And again, remember to breathe. I think I was just holding my breath. There we go. Nice. Thanks. Glad you guys are liking the colors. One of my favorite color combos is this teal with that kind of chocolatey brown. Just such a good combo. All right, so now we're actually going to go back to the violin. We're going to put some highlights in here on the left-hand side of the violin, because again, we have our dark shadows on the right-hand side. So you do want to get all that teal off your knife. So if you need to dunk it in the water and wipe it off, you can. I'm going to grab some of the yellow, a decent chunk, and just like adding the white and the purples into the background, we're going to kind of do the same thing. And we're going to kind of hug this yellow again around the left-hand side of this violin. And my brown is already starting to dry a little bit. So again, you're kind of starting to see the texture and being able to see what we call the transparency of the paint. And this is one of the reasons why I like using student grade paint, because of the transparency. I'm putting on the yellow but the color's changing based on the color that's underneath it. And again, the more that you do this, the more your brain starts to recognize different areas and different sections of light and dark. And in general, the light areas, the highlights that we just added with the yellow, those, because they're lighter, kind of come forward more as you look at it, compared to darker shadow elements, and that pushes it back. So this is how we create our depth of field in a painting, and this is how we create that magical illusion of a 3D object on a flat surface. All right. Cool. Thanks for all the extra people jumping on. Appreciate it. All right. So now I do kind of have our highlight on here. I'm going to go and add a few extra colors into these elements so that way they can dry a little bit. We will use a brush to put the strings of the violin on. I am going to do an outline here, and I'll go over whatever that decorative element is on the violin. If you know what it's called, please leave a comment so I can learn about what I'm painting as well. All right, let's see. So let's go, we're gonna go into the black. I'm actually gonna make a light purple. And there's a little bit of teal mixed in with it, that's okay. And that actually kind of works. If you do have a little bit of your white, purple, and a touch of the teal, what it's doing is picking up colors from the background, and we're gonna scrape a little bit on top of the black. And again, it diffuses rather quickly with this lighter color on top of a darker color. And again, just kind of creating that illusion of depth. We are going to put another shadow element right here on the bottom of this. And then I think we will be moving into brushwork with our paint, our black outlines. All right, so for this middle element, I'm actually going to grab some of that white again. We're going to make a darker gray than what's on there. And on the bottom section of that, I think that's dark enough, I might adjust. On this bottom section, just going right around, and yeah, I'm gonna make it a touch darker. There we go. Okay. Let's see, I'm inclined to do one more thing. I'm going to take the black and mix it with the raw sienna. I want just a touch shade darker right here on that right-hand side. So pulling some of that black aside. There we go. And it is going to be pretty dark, so I'm actually going to make a new pile. I wanted a little bit more red. There we go. So that way it has a little bit of that raw, burnt sienna color in with it. And I am using a decent amount of pressure because I just want a hint of this shadow happening here. I don't need it to be super opaque. So I want some of the colors underneath to shine through with it. And with this scraping style, if you press a little bit harder, then it allows you to see some of the colors underneath. But like I said, the more that you practice with, the more that you're going to find your skill. And I've taught my intro to palette knife scraping for a couple of years now, and I'm always surprised and impressed with the different ways that my students will handle the knife, apply the paint, and a lot of times it's just like, oh, I didn't think about doing that. Oh, that's a good idea. So again, trust your instincts as you are diving into the creative realms. All right, so now we're going to move over to a pointy brush and black paint. I'm going to put a little bit of water on my brush. There we go. And we're going to go over an outline of the perimeter of our violin. Then I'm going to go over this element. Then we'll move into white paint to do our strings, and that should kind of take us into the conclusion of the painting. So if you are catching this on the replay, I highly recommend that you let all of this dry first before you move into doing your black outlines. It will just make your life a little bit easier if you can do that. I will be jumping right in, and my paint is still wet. So using kind of medium pressure, I am making sure this black line overlaps some of the background as well as the violin. This does give it a bit of a pop art feel. So if you do not want to do this, you do not have to. And as you're using the brush, you do want to mind the pressure of your brush. Light pressure is going to create a bit of a skinnier line. More pressure will create a bit of a fatter line. And this is definitely one of those things that with practice, it's the only way to get better and more comfortable at it. So if you need to, while you're practicing, maybe put your pinky out. You can put that on the edge of the canvas where the paint's dry, and you can use that as your pivot point, or rest your forearm against the edge of the table. And definitely remember to breathe while you are doing this. Holding your breath is only going to make you more shaky. And again, if you're finding that you're shaky, exhale as you touch the canvas, and that makes it a little bit easier for you. All right, so now we're going to go over this element, and again, just applying that paint a little bit thicker, so that way it's opaque, especially if you're like me using student grade paint. It's totally okay if you need to do more than one coat. All right, and again, I was concentrating, sorry. Sometimes talking and concentrating, it's like walking and chewing gum. So far, I do okay with it. All right, so we're gonna clean the brush out really good. I'm gonna grab some fresh white, because my white on there is contaminated with the blue and the purple. And if you're painting at home, please send me an email of what you paint. I really enjoy seeing everybody's paintings. And let me know recommendations for what you want me to add to the list for the demos. And if you are looking for more in-depth classes, please check out my online school, paintwithlovejoy.com. And I do have a intro to knife painting class, which is a lot of fun, as well as my Paint Your Pet course. And in that one, you're going to learn about your value scale. All right, so now we're going to put the strings on here, and I'm going to apply this rather thick just because my paint is wet. So again, let your painting at home dry before you do this step. So I'm going to start at the top, and again, we're just making these lines, shoot all the way down. I'm going to actually grab more paint because it is picking up the black. But if you're at home, again, let this dry, and I want you to create your whole line at the same time. And we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll actually see how many I can fit on here. And if you are like me and your paint is still kind of wet and you've got some of the colors showing up, we're just going to kind of work it into it. So I'm going to come back with some more intense white on there. So it looks like I'm actually going to only fit like 3.5 strings on there. And I don't think mine would be a very good violin since my strings are a little wavy. If your strings are a little bit wavy, just embrace it. That's okay. That's just where you're painting for today. That's where I'm painting for today. If you paint the same thing tomorrow, it might be a little different. So I do tell a lot of my students that painting is a lot like yoga. Wherever you're at today is where you're at. Yesterday you may have been able to do a concept, and today maybe it's a little more difficult, maybe a little more easier. But again, just each day is a brand new day. All right. So we're going to put a few more highlights in a few other places. And again, I'll be applying mine kind of thick just because my paint is so wet. And I am going on top of the black that I was adding earlier. So kind of on this bottom area. And again, at home, just observe and mimic what you see. It does not have to be exact. And as you are painting, especially if you've been painting for a while in one setting, like if you've been painting for a couple of hours, I want you to get out of your chair, walk 5 to 10 feet away from your painting and look at it from a distance. This is the normal viewing distance for artwork. All right, and actually, as I'm looking at my reference item, I messed up one thing, so we're going to go back and fix that. Apparently down here, the strings didn't need to go off the bottom, so this is an easy fix. All I'm going to do is go back to my knife, grab some of that black paint, and on my reference item, or my reference photo, it looks like the strings come just a little bit past this block down here, and that's about it. So I'm going to just cut off the strings like we didn't even add it. And I'm actually kind of glad I did that so I can show you at home that if you paint something in the wrong area, it's okay. You just go back and paint on top of it and adjust. Painting is never, ever, ever the end of the world. All right, so let me see. I try not to watch what's on the screen too much. All right, doesn't look too bad. So I do expect you guys at home to turn out better than what I painted. Hopefully more straight strings. But this was a lot of fun to paint. So good suggestion. Thanks, Jen. All right, and I think that kind of gets us to the conclusion of the painting. So thank you guys for joining me and making this a regular thing. Again, just awesome to have this structure right now in this crazy time. So I do look forward to these paintings every morning. If you feel like supporting me even more to keep these going, please keep watching the videos, share these videos with your friends. I get a lot of benefits just from you guys watching them through YouTube. If you are inclined to check out the online school and check out some of those courses, do that as well. Any pictures, feel free to email them to me and tag me in social media. Yeah, so I think that takes care of it. Again, let me know any comments. I'm going to try to get a calendar up and running with a list of possibly 2 weeks out of what I'll be painting for the demos. And I am working on other videos now that I've transitioned into my home studio. So I'm hoping to be able to produce a lot of stuff for you guys this year. So, all right. Until tomorrow, have a great day, and I will see everybody then. Take care. Cheers.